So I recently got this Sigma DP2x compact camera. The special thing about this is that it has a foveon sensor. So basically, instead of the classic Bayer pattern that most camera sensors have these days, ignoring, for example, the Fujifilm with their X-trans pattern, the foveon sensor has actually 3 layers, and each layer detects red, green, and blue independently. So in theory, you get more color data. But basically, when I received the camera, the battery that came with it didn't work. It also didn't have a charger, so I decided to make my own. So the process, as with most of my projects, started off with measuring things. So first of all, I took apart the original battery, and then I measured the dimensions of the housing. And that will come in handy later when I try to recreate the battery in CAD. I first had a check of this original battery cell, which is model number ICP093834B. Initially, I thought that the battery would sort of be like something like this 18650, which is INR 18650, or IMR in this case. I believe that is a reference to the chemistry of the battery, but unfortunately, when I Googled it, I couldn't find any references to it online. Ooh, that fell. So because there were no replacements that I could find, my only option was to replace it. So in the mod, basically it's just a replacement for the cell. So you can see here that I've soldered the 2 terminals of the battery from where the original used to go onto a connector, and that connector can go to a little battery from a drone. So in effect, all I'm doing is just replacing the cell. And now let's look at how I made this replacement. So in my final design, I essentially recreated the dimensions of the battery on the outside while letting my little wires slip out on the inside. So if we go to analysis and open our section view, essentially you can see that this green thing is the stand-in for the circuit board. You can see that there's a little space for the chips that reside on the bottom, and on the edges I'm supporting the circuit board by pushing it in. I've got a little stopper to make sure that I've got the board in the right place, and then I've got the exposing for the gold contacts. You can also see that I've got the 2 little notches that make sure that the battery is, I guess, the proper battery that Sigma wants you to use. And then you can also see the little fillet that is on the battery. So basically, in older versions, I was just going to have that, I call it the battery stuffer, just be there, because there's a little thingy that stops the battery from falling out. And I thought that, oh, that sticks out pretty far, that should be enough. But turns out it's not quite enough. So in a later revision, not this one, but in the later ones, you can see that I've extended that. It's all about refining your design. Like, it's all about trying, seeing if it works. You can measure twice and try to cut once, but you never know until you really make it. So in the final version, I have because the battery is 38 millimeters high, I've got this bottom piece, that the battery stuffer, that is actually 2 millimeters on the bottom, and then the rest is 36. That means that I have a little thing that it can rest on, sort of like a lid. And if we go and turn off the board stuffer, you can see that the walls are quite thick on this one. On some of the earlier versions, they were quite thin. So that meant that the print sometimes failed because there really isn't that much space in between the board and how big, like, the maximum size of the battery can be inside the camera. So I really had to trial and error sort of find that golden sweet spot between having a stable print and not having it be too big, in either that the board couldn't fit or the battery wouldn't fit inside. So with the assembly, it's actually quite simple. First, you get your battery shell, and the positive side faces the curve, the fillet. So first, because there's the little stopper on the positive side, I like to put it in on an angle so that the positive goes in first and then the negative. Then I just check that the contacts are aligned. They're not quite, so I use a ruler just to stuff it in. Just make sure that everything is flush, which it is, and then you put the battery stuffer in there. So now just put the wires in the notches, and you can see that I've got a little channel for the nickel strip that was from the original battery. And that just slides neatly in. You can see that the contacts are nice and flush. Now, I usually put some tape on it, but because I'm trying to demo the assembly, there's no time for tape, so let's just slide it in. So you can see there, I'm going to align it with the battery and nice satisfying click. And then we can plug a battery in. And voila, camera turns on. How easy is that? So there we go, we've got a replacement battery for the Sigma DP2x, and this battery should work for all Sigma DP models. So if you've got a dead battery lying around, you can always do this mod and give new life to your Foveon camera. See you in the next one.